and welcome to All Things Eastern. I'm Patti Dobson, your host, and I am here tonight with two very special guests. We have Richard and Lee Basinger, who are a duo with a duo called Fateless Tears. Mm-hmm. And your music, correct me if I'm wrong, is it's symphonic music meets gothic meets metal.
Yes.
Which doesn't fit together. So why don't you tell the audience a little bit about your music?
Okay, well, what if you smush it all together, it's symphonic gothic metal. And so what that means is there's elements of orchestra and classical songwriting. Then the gothic is the song, it can mean different things. And with us, it mainly means that we're not writing typical love songs, party songs. You know, we're tackling a subject matter that's not, you know, it's more romantic and gothic in nature than your standard music. And then the metal, well, that kind of sums it up.
Pretty self-explanatory.
But because you have the symphonic tendencies, there's a greater change in dynamics and musicality, so it's more, wide-ranging than your typical just, bash-it-out metal.
Well, talk to me about, I'm intrigued by the gothic aspect. So talk to me a little bit about the gothic aspect of your music. You know, the picture in my head when I hear gothic, I don't know why, and I could be wrong, but I think Celtic music and forests and...
There are some of our songs that have been inspired by Celtic mythology. Mm-hmm. A lot of the subject matter is similar to some of the Gothic and Victorian writers. That's an inspiration point for a lot of the lyrics. So.
Okay. Now, who does the writing? Do you both write?
I write 95% of the music, and she writes 95% of the lyrics and vocal melodies. So occasionally we'll have a song where she'll have something written out that I didn't compose to, and sometimes I occasionally have lyrics that are used. So, but by and large, she does the vocal aspect of it, and I do the music aspect of it.
Now, how long have you been performing together?
Well...
And we have a funny smile here.
The first thing that we did together was in 2001. Mm-hmm. But the first Fateless Tears was in 2006.
Let's just say I did a lot of background vocals on projects. I was less confident with my vocality and my lyric writing or being in front of a microphone. I had what you call red light syndrome for a very long time.
I have to say, we're going to listen to some music in a little bit, and when I heard it, your voice is incredible. I cannot believe that you were shy or timid to come out and sing. That is crazy to me.
But very true. It took him years to get me past the point where talking on a microphone or singing on recordings didn't bother me.
Wow.
And we've never performed live because
I have extreme stage fright.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of tough if you're a group. So what do you do your own CDs and such then?
And with the internet and the modern age, it's not as difficult as it was, say, 20 years ago. 20 years ago it would have been really hard for us to get overly noticed, but because of the fact that there is an anomaly niche of female-fronted heavy metal, there's chat rooms and forums that cater to that. There's radio stations that cater to that. So if you can find those, then they're always looking for new bands to put on display, so to speak. And so that's how we gathered our fan base, and through MySpace and stuff like that, we just slowly built a nice little fan base, and we've expanded from 2006 to now, and we're working on CD number 6.
Wow.
So.
And it's all original music.
It's all original music.
How did you come to be Fateless Tears? How did that name happen?
I had a dream.
Really?
I woke up from a dream one night, and the dream was a little girl sitting on some steps, and she was just crying, and you could tell from the scene. It was very impoverished, and that just those two words stuck in my head at that point, and that's where it came from. So,
And I absolutely loved the name once I heard it. And that was one of the...
You can't forget it.
No, that was one of the things that convinced me to go ahead and, start fronting the vocals and the being more comfortable with having pictures taken and things like that.
Being on a podcast.
Yes.
Well, why don't we listen to a piece of music? This first selection is called Inner Sanctum, and we'll listen to a little bit of it, and then we'll come back and you can talk about it. How about that?
Yeah,
okay.
Good.
Child, come to me, for I alone hold the key. Unlooking reverie to sweet memory, just as 96.
Your voice is really haunting.
Thank you. That's actually one of the terms we use to describe some of our lyrics, as well as my vocal quality.
Well, talk to us about that particular piece, if you would.
Okay, well, that was originally on an album we did in 2007 called Nightborn. And why don't you talk about the concept of that?
The concept on that album was really to tell a narrative story from beginning to end. And part of the idea was that there are people out there that are keepers of the soul. And there are dark forces that really come into play and try to tear down the individual, the society, and inner sanctum comes into, there has to be a retreat where you nourish the soul. So that's kind of the concept behind the album in a nutshell.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you've got a safe place to land, a protected space to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, where did these ideas come from? I'm usually it's one thing to have a song, one piece, and you tell a story with one song. But this particular album, for instance, it's an entire story. So how do you do that?
Usually he writes the music first, and I write the lyrics to go with the music, and then he has kind of an arrangement set up for the order that the songs will be in on the CD. So I start from a beginning point and think of where I want to be for an ending point, and I try to pick different voices or different perspectives to actually make a journey.
And of the 6 albums, 3 of them have been concept albums, and the other 3 have been, there might be a suite that matches together, there might be, but that kind of falls into the symphonic part and just progressive music in general, which is, I guess, a broader term for us would be progressive rock / metal, so.
Okay.
And so, yeah, that's where it comes from, and I just, I start writing, and whatever comes out, and,
It's a process.
Yeah, and it's just like any creative process. You get started in it, and when you start dealing with all the components in the music, from the guitars to drums to bass, synthesizer, all that, you get attached to it in a certain way that I think if you're working in a full band is different. It's more like a composer type mentality that I bring into when I'm trying to do that. So within that, I'm looking in larger, musical chunks to begin with, and so I think that feeds into the lyrics as well, because she gets to hear it over and over and
over.
I get very familiar with each piece before we ever try to put lyrics or vocal melodies to it.
Okay.
So while we don't, practice endless times in front of audiences to, sing the songs live or anything like that, I have probably sung most of the songs as many times as most people that do tour. So
It's one way to become familiar with this. Now, you've brought a second piece tonight, and we're going to listen to that. What is that called?
It's Rainchild, and it's off of my last solo CD, which was released in August, called The Game. And it's just an instrumental piece that I wrote while we were having one of our little tirade rainstorms back in May. And so that's
Okay.
kind of where it comes from.
Well, let's listen to that a little bit, and then when we come back, you can talk a little bit more about this piece. And it's called what again?
Rainchild.
Rainchild. That is a completely different style of music than what we heard first.
I write a lot. And within that, we decided very early that having a recording studio in our home was almost mandatory because I do write a lot. So that's how we kind of have a recording studio that we can live in. And
So you have a house that fits into your recording studio.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
pretty much, yeah. And so I'm almost always, when not at work and not dealing with, other parts of life, I'm in there creating. And so everything comes out. One song can be, extremely heavy black metal type stuff, and the next one can be, what did you call it? Desert surf the first time that you heard that
Desert
one?
Surf. My favorite is when he actually does acoustic pieces, though.
Really?
And I went to school here for music, and composition was my primary instrument here. So, I've been via the internet. I've been in a lot of different projects, and so it can range from, one day I'm doing something that's very calm and mellow, and the next day it's, rather intense, and probably the neighbors wonder what's going on. But so.
The landscape of technology has really changed. And I mean, if you were to want to try to pursue a recording career, I don't know, a decade ago, 15 years ago, you couldn't have done it this way. But with technology changing the way we get music and the way we participate in entertainment, you can do this, and you guys have gone and gotten a fan base by using technology.
Yeah, and that's exactly true. I started in 1987 was when I first started doing music on even a semi-professional level, and it's been an aspect of my life since then. And yeah, it wasn't even in the late 90s. It started kind of being available that you could find avenues to get your stuff heard, but it still wasn't like it is now, where you have 1,000 different
Venues to have yourself heard and to try to reach out to new audience members.
Now, since you don't perform live, how can people get a hold of your CDs?
We are signed to Blue Freya Media, which is a label out of Australia, and they have us on every digital outlet that you can think of, iTunes. As far as physical CDs, they can be bought through Amazon, and so yeah, that's the other thing with today's age. CD sales are way down, and MP3 sales are way up. So
Okay.
yeah, it's predominantly digital now at this point.
Well, thank you so much for coming and visiting with us tonight. It is something to hear your music, and I, for one, am going to go find some online and listen to some more. Thank you both for joining us.
We appreciate you.
Thank you for visiting with us on All Things Eastern, and we'll see you next time.